Hello, everyone, and welcome to the White House. My name is Macon Phillips. I'm the Director of New Media here, and I'm joined by Denis McDonough, the Chief of Staff for the National Security Staff, who's here to talk about a report that was released about the attempted terrorist attack on Christmas Day. Before we hand it over to Denis, I want to remind everyone you can actually learn more about that report and actually download the unclassified version at whitehouse.gov. There's a link to it from the homepage. So please, during this, check it out, read through it, and join us at whitehouse.gov/live to ask questions of Denis. But I'll hand it over to Denis to say a few things off the top, and then we'll move right to questions.
Macon, thanks a lot, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for having me. It's obviously been a very busy several weeks here, just under 2 weeks since the failed terrorist attack on Christmas Day. Right after the attack, the President directed John Brennan, his Assistant for Counterterrorism and Homeland Security, to conduct a review of the watch listing system. As I think you all know, the terrorist in this instance, Mr. Abdul Muttalib, was able to had a visa, was able to board a plane destined to the United States. Notwithstanding the fact that there was some very troubling intelligence and some very troubling information about him. And so what the President asked John to get to the bottom of was why, notwithstanding all this information that was out there, did we not have Mr. Abdul Muttalib on some kind of watch list? John finished that review, frankly, in record time, in just about 11 or 12 days or so. The President urged him to act with urgency on this, with speed on this, so that we could begin immediate remedial action to update whatever kind of policy changes are necessary to ensure this doesn't happen again. Obviously, this initial review, which was we believe needed for immediate remedial action, does not obviate the need, as the President said in his remarks today, for continued assessment, continued analysis of what we knew about this plot and what this plot tells us about the tactics of al-Qaeda, the areas from which al-Qaeda intends to attack us, and so forth. So he'll continue to press on that. We'll continue to work in the interagency with our colleagues to make sure that we're getting to the bottom of this. But the President also wanted to do something, I think, unusual today. He, as you heard him in his remarks, or may have heard him in his remarks, indicated that he feels that the buck stops with him on these matters. So not only was this very quick accounting, not only did the President accept responsibility for it, but the President also wanted to do this as transparently as possible. That's why he has ordered released the unclassified version of this report, which is up on, as Macon said, whitehouse.gov now. And we encourage you to take a look at it, ask any questions that you have about it, and look forward to answering them. Let me just say one other thing before we go to your questions. John Brennan and Secretary Napolitano just did a press conference over with Robert in the press room. Secretary Napolitano was asked to do a separate review, a review of our detection capabilities in airports for the reasons outlined in the report, and obviously which they've just discussed now in the press briefing room. Namely, to make sure that we have the best science informing our capabilities to ensure that we're keeping up with the tactics of our enemies here, the use of these kinds of new kinds of explosives, or frankly, in some instances, not such new kinds of explosives. And she's updated on that. Her remarks are also going to be posted on whitehouse.gov in the very near term here, and I give you a sense of some of the immediate steps that she has directed to increase airline security over the course of these last several days. So, Megan, with that, I'll look forward to some questions.
So we've gotten a pretty common question to kick things off about the report, again, that's posted at whitehouse.gov for those of you coming late to this. Again, we're taking questions through whitehouse.gov/live. But about the report, Mike asks, declassified version. Does that mean we will only get to read about 5 words with all the other parts blacked out? We will not know what the hell it says? And Dylan follows up, what's in the classified version that's not in the classified version? So can you talk about what we can share, what we can't, what people are getting?
Sure. I appreciate the question. The bottom line really is this, there's not a dramatic difference in the conclusions underlying the unclassified report and the classified report. Point of fact is that the main findings are the same in each report. What's different in the declassified report, and frankly going through a lot of this information was what led us to have to release it so late in the day today. But what is not in the declassified report is any indication of the sources and methods we rely on to gather intelligence. Fact is, since the first days of this administration, I think the president has recognized Yemen as a potential, as John indicated in his press briefing today, a potential challenge for us. We've tried to keep the pressure on al-Qaeda Central in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Part of keeping that pressure on al-Qaeda Central is keeping pressure on al-Qaeda affiliates, be those al-Qaeda affiliates, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is largely in Yemen now, al-Qaeda affiliates in Southeast Asia, al-Qaeda affiliates in East Africa, in Somalia, for example, or even making sure that we're keeping right on top of al-Qaeda-inspired individuals here, as the president indicated in his remarks today, here at home. So the one thing we don't want to do is, as we increase our collection in this area, for example, in Yemen, which the president, as I indicated, has made a big target of our collection efforts, we don't want to compromise the sources and methods that we rely on to collect that kind of information. So the declassified version, while reflecting the baseline findings and really a lot of the information that's in the classified version, protects sources and methods so as to not compromise our ability to continue to gather the kind of facts, intelligence, information, developments that we've relied on over the course of the last several months, but also, frankly, over the course of this review, allowing us to reach back and take a retrospective look at this thing. The bottom line here, too, is the purpose of the review is to make sure that we understand what we got right, but also what we got wrong, so we don't do it again in the future.
Okay, great. Jason Gordon asks, I'd like to know, in light of what occurred on Christmas Day, what steps are being taken to assess risk of every passenger who flies from other countries prior to a flight?
Well, it's a good question. Obviously, one of the big points that Secretary Napolitano has made over the course of the last several days is the need to better collaborate and cooperate with our international partners. Early in this review process, she sent her Deputy Secretary, Jane Hall-Lute, as well as a couple of her assistant secretaries, including David Heyman, to travel overseas to get a hands-on sense of how cooperation is going with our international partners. So you're right to focus on this idea of how we're working with the international community on these steps. Secretary Napolitano, in her remarks this evening, also outlined a series of other steps that we're going to take with our partners. But as it relates to assessing the risk of individual travelers, obviously nobody comes to the United States without a valid visa and a valid passport. So we're obviously going to rely on our consular officials in our embassies around the world and our consulates around the world to make sure that they understand who's applying for visas. We're going to rely on our understanding of the environment from which they're coming, and the country from which they're coming, to make sure that we recognize the challenges that the country faces, the threats that are extant in those countries, so that we can be sure that we're mindful of the challenges any travelers might present. And then, of course, we have different capabilities in each of the airports to make sure that we are screening luggage, screening passengers, making sure they have valid visas, having behavioral science experts around to make sure that we're understanding if there's anything suspicious going on. But the bottom line here really is this: we're going to have to rely on a variety of different professionals, be they our consular officials in the embassies, our Homeland Security or Customs and Border Protection officials in the Department of Homeland Security, our immigration and customs experts in the Department of Homeland Security. What we have to do is make sure that as each of these agencies gets information about a particular threat or a particular challenge, that not only are they using that information inside their own agencies, but also making it available to all the others.
Okay. Soren Nalursa asks, the introduction of Homeland Security did little more than introduce a whole new bureaucracy. Are you working on anything to limit the channels through which sensitive information gets transmitted and on an interagency method to speed up communication?
Thanks for the question, Soren. I actually think the Department of Homeland Security under the leadership of Secretary Napolitano has proven to be a very capable and very important tool in our Homeland Security fight, in the counterterrorism fight. And frankly, she gets to draw on the informed experience and excellence of thousands of government professionals in that effort. But a couple things. One is we are ensuring, this president is ensuring, I think it was on display on Tuesday when he brought together the heads of all the relevant agencies to find out from each of them what steps they're taking to improve the system as it relates to the shortcomings we identified with this Christmas Day attack. But he didn't just meet with the FBI director alone, he met with the whole team together so that the information and the intelligence that we can draw from the FBI director as he updates us on the investigation, and therefore as he shares good information about evolving al-Qaeda tactics and evolving explosive devices that they're relying on, gives an opportunity for everybody to take that information back to their agency. So on your question about communication, we are increasing communication, making sure that all this information is shared as a matter of course. And we're obviously, that's true if we're meeting in the Situation Room, as the President does weekly with his National Security and Counterterrorism team, or if people are scattered around the world, and that's by virtue of the secure networks that we rely on, which are maintained and worked out by our White House Communications Agency and by our National Security Council staff to make sure that we can have that kind of rapid and secure communication, whether the President's in Hawaii, whether the President's back here right here at the White House. We're making sure that he's able to reach out and draw on the information, secure information from all of his relevant advisors and interagency players.
Okay, so we have two questions that are related. Take a little bit bigger picture. The first one comes from Alex Cordman, who says, I am studying counterterrorism in college. Hope everyone that needs to understand does, in fact, understand within the intelligence community and government that the key point is that the fight is being brought to us and not vice versa, that we need to run around the world. We can't be in that many continents at the same time and sufficiently defend our own country here at home. The second question that's related comes from Roger Clem, who says, if we only work on a defensive strategy, then it really won't matter. Why try and catch a bullet when we can disarm the weapon before it's fired? So can you speak a little bit to those bigger issues?
They're both fair questions, and I appreciate Alex and Roger taking the time to send them in. A couple things, and the President addressed that in his statement today, this idea that what we won't do is sit back and wait for more al-Qaeda operatives to come to us, where in fact we're going to take the fight to al-Qaeda. That was the motivating factor behind the President's decisions as it related to increasing our resources in Afghanistan. It's a motivating factor behind the President's interest in deepening the partnership and alliance with our Pakistani allies in Pakistan to ensure that we can take the fight, that the Pakistanis can take the fight to the extremists, al-Qaeda affiliates, al-Qaeda allies, and al-Qaeda who threaten not only Pakistan, but frankly threaten the United States as well. But it's not just a question about Afghanistan and Pakistan. We're seeing that as we keep the pressure on them in South Asia, they're trying to move out. So they're establishing affiliates in Yemen and in Somalia, and even making an effort to increase their presence in West Africa and obviously in Southeast Asia. But I think as you've seen over the course just of these last several weeks, we've dramatically increased our efforts in Yemen, where we're working very closely with the Yemeni government. We're increasing our investments in their training and their capacity. We're obviously dramatically increasing our intelligence collection there, as I referenced earlier. And same thing in Somalia. We're making sure that we have an opportunity to keep the pressure on al-Qaeda affiliates there, including al-Shabaab, so that they're not in a position to try to do the opposite to us. The bottom line is this, and I think the president was quite clear about it in his West Point speech just 6 weeks ago or so, when he outlined his new strategy on Afghanistan and Pakistan. He also underscored the need for continued vigilance in places, as he said in that speech, like Yemen and Somalia. He had underscored that in each of those places, we're going to make sure that al-Qaeda and its allies is met by a mixture of pressure from us and partnership with our allies as we continue to train, as we continue to increase investments in local forces to take that fight to al-Qaeda. I think Yemen is a perfect example of it. We're going to continue to do that, and I think this attack on Christmas Day underscores why it's so important that we do that.
Okay. Donald Leonard asks, I have a question for the White House. Are you guys thinking outside the box, picking people's brains, trying to come up with new methods to handle security? So what are you doing that's new?
It's a good question, and I appreciate the opportunity. It allows me to go back to something I forgot that I didn't address in the last question, so thanks, Donald. And that's this. I think the idea here that we need to stay on offense is clear, and we're doing that, as I said, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Somalia, in Pakistan, where we're working with our Pakistani partners. Frankly, in Southeast Asia, where senior al-Qaeda officials have encountered greater resistance, frankly, over the course of the last year or so. So we're going to stay on the offense. But the other thing we're not going to do, and I think you heard a little bit of this from the president in his statement today, is cede the ground either ideologically or in terms of communications to al-Qaeda. That's why the president thought it was so important that he go to Cairo earlier this year and give a speech to Muslim communities around the world. That's why the president went to Ankara in Turkey and gave a speech to the Turkish parliament. The message in both of those speeches, as reiterated again in Oslo and again yet this afternoon, is that we, as Americans, offer a future of great hope to many of our Muslim friends and allies around the world. And as you look at al-Qaeda, they offer nothing but a hateful ideology, a murderous agenda, and in fact offer only cynicism and not hope. So if you take, just for example, the terrific Muslim American population that we have in this country, Muslims have generated remarkable education levels, have achieved remarkable education levels, have generated terrific levels of income. All these things the president pointed out in the Cairo speech to put a lie to the accusations from al-Qaeda, which, as I said, just offers a hateful agenda, murderous ideology, when in fact, as we've seen, not only here but overseas, we offer an agenda of great hope.
While you were answering that, Billy Freeland had a follow-up and said, you just mentioned the dramatic increases in assistance to Yemen and Somalia. Will you be reviewing other countries, such as Indonesia and other Southeast Asian nations that have grappled with terrorism? It seems like we need to stay ahead of the next threat rather than be reactive every time your catastrophe reveals that we have not committed enough resources.
That's a fair point from Billy. I think I'm not willing to concede the point that we haven't committed enough resources. The question is, do we have the right allocation of resources? And I think your point is the right one, which is, how are we staying ahead of the threat so that we're beating al-Qaeda to the spot for each of these threats? So in response to your question, we're absolutely increasing our training and our partnership with our friends in Southeast Asia. Obviously, Indonesia is a country of particular interest to the president. But we've also done that in Yemen, in Somalia, across the Sahel region, and in northern Africa, where we want to make sure that we're investing in governments that are fighting increased Al-Qaeda-backed insurgencies in different instances. But the bottom line really is a question of how we're going to make sure that we maintain a reliance on our values, on our capacities. And as the President said today, it's we who will define us and define our role in the world. And we're not going to let Al-Qaeda define us or drag us into something that we aren't or we don't want to be.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. The next one comes from Dean Kaishuk, who asks, I'd like to know, how are we going to afford all these resources without increasing our budget even farther than it is? We'll try to connect the national security and economic impact here.
It's a fair question from Dean, and that's why I wanted to make sure when Billy said that this is evidence that we didn't spend a sufficient amount or invest a sufficient amount in some of these threats. I think the question really has to be, at the moment, we're dedicating a tremendous amount of resources to this fight. We're obviously, as I indicated, increasing training in Yemen, increasing training in Southeast Asia, increasing investment in intelligence really across the board. And I think that you'll see in the President's budget, when it's announced next month, increased investments in the kinds of programs that the President announced in the Cairo speech that says we want to counter Al-Qaeda's hateful ideology and agenda with one of hope and opportunity. But by the same token, we want to, pardon me.
Some more.
Sorry about that. We want to make sure that we're not over-investing while we have our challenges here at home, because obviously a strong economy, investments here at home and in jobs is part of our own national strength and our national security.
Okay, so we got one last question, if your voice can hold up here, from Ruben, who says, do you think that this attempted attack has or will make our defenses stronger?
I think that's the challenge, and that's the challenge the President laid out for us in the Situation Room earlier this week, which is how are we going to ensure that the lessons we've learned as we've dodged this bullet, as he said, how are we going to ensure that the lessons we learned here make us stronger, make us more resilient to fend off the next attack, make us more able and more ready to recognize new threats as they materialize. And so the bottom line is that's exactly the ethos the President is trying to communicate. It's up to us now to follow through, and let's see if we can do it. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I'm glad you could tune in. We'll make this video available on the website shortly, so you can watch it and share it with your friends. Again, the report for you to review is at whitehouse.gov, and stay tuned for more chats in the future. And have a good night. Thanks a lot, everybody.